I think technology in hunting is kind of a similar thing. Like, I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I'm not saying it's necessarily great for hunting. I'm also not necessarily saying it's bad for hunting, right? I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, but I think it's going to continue to evolve and continue to be there, kind of
Yeah.
regardless of how we feel about it, right? Like, I don't think our personal feelings are necessarily going to dictate the amount of interaction between technology and hunting in the near future.
Welcome to the LandTrust Podcast, where land, technology, and the outdoors meet. Whether you're a landowner, an outdoor enthusiast, or someone curious about the future of recreation on private land, you're in the right place. Each episode, we share real stories from the LandTrust community, from unforgettable guest experiences to conversations with landowners about their land and why they choose to share it, plus interviews with leaders, shaping how we all experience the outdoors. And now, here's your host, Nick DeCastro.
Welcome to the LandTrust Podcast, where land, technology, and the outdoors come together. This episode is part of our Outsides Insiders series, where we sit down with the founders, operators, and insiders shaping the future of the outdoor industry. Quick note before we dive in, the opinions shared by our guests are their own and not necessarily representative of their companies or of LandTrust. Today's guest is Gregg Farrell, Director of Brand at Tactacam. Gregg is a seasoned brand and product leader with deep roots in the outdoor industry. He's currently driving brand strategy and marketing at Reveal by Tactacam, and before that, he spent several years scaling First Lite's product categories and brand presence. Gregg's got a knack for turning ideas into campaigns and products that actually move the needle, and he's all about building brands that feel authentic and connected to the customer. Gregg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, we've been trying to get this one going. You've been a busy man over there. You guys are growing, it seems like a weed, so I'm glad we were finally able to get some time together to chat.
Yeah, I jokingly say it's always all gas, no brakes over here, which is good job security. So I'm not going to complain.
For sure. So I did give you a little bit of an intro there, but for the folks out there, why don't you start with your bona fides and just kind of run us through your background? How did you get here? How long you been working in the kind of the hunt industry and all that?
Yeah, so my intro to the hunt industry was starting at First Lite. So I was early on at First Lite. I think I was employee number 7 or 8, maybe. So 3 of those employees when I started were founders, right? So
Wow.
It doesn't leave very many after that. But yeah, that was kind of my intro to the outdoor industry. And I started there at a time where, when you have 7 or 8 people in an organization, including founders, it's like everybody's doing everything, right? Which I'm sure you and a lot of your listeners know a lot about. So I wore a lot of hats over there. To start, I was doing some marketing, was helping out with sales, was doing some product stuff. Frankly, was answering the phone, right? When we got customer service calls sometime, but it was like a little bit of everything. Eventually there, I really found my home in product. And I think that for me stemmed from a lot of my background and experience, frankly, growing up like in the trades, like doing construction, right? Like I was a builder. I was always a problem solver, right? And then you add that to my passion for hunting and frankly, like being a gearhead, like it all just kind of like came to this head at like building product for hunting companies. Cause like I was always the guy that, I'd buy a tree stand and I would rip it apart and replace parts and chop it up. And, even my clothing systems, right? Like a lot of the gear I was wearing at the time, it was Frankenstein pieces together and different pieces from the hunting space, the outdoor space, the workspace, etc. So I spent about 10 years there. Really eventually, right, where I found my home there was when First Lite decided to get into whitetail. And I took over kind of ownership, not only on the product side of building that category, right, but also really on the brand side, right? Like how are we going to move into a space where we didn't typically play before, being that we were a Western-based company, and prove ourselves to be authentic. Now, myself growing up in the Midwest, like I cut my teeth on whitetail, so that was a very easy and authentic voice for me to speak. And I'm really proud of what we did there. I spent, quite a few years there kind of building that program. Eventually got to the point where I was kind of ready for the next challenge. So I moved away from soft goods and came on at Tactacam Reveal. So I moved over into the hard goods and technology space. And I've been leading brand and marketing for them for about the last year and a half now.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a handful of questions. Kind of, you touched on a few things there. So as you mentioned, First Lite was an Idaho-based company, so very Western company, Western focus. And now you are from the Midwest. You lived out there. When did you move back, by the way?
So I lived out there for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and I moved back here, gosh, probably 5 or 6 years ago now. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You went from soft goods, kind of camo, that kind of stuff at a very Western company who did kind of not transition, but at least added more of a Midwest bent to it through their whitetail lines. But now you're back in the Midwest working on, I don't know, like, do you consider game cameras a more Midwestern product? I kind of do in a sense, because, I feel like the Western hunters, and we could talk about this too, there in some circles, there's like taboo around game cameras and game cameras on public land. There's legalities, all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. I'd be curious to get your perspective on what it's been like to go from a soft goods gear oriented company that has a Western bent to a hardware and software business that was born out of the Midwest.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, right? I think you asked an interesting question about like our customer base, right? Like, what do we consider our kind of like home field advantage, right? If you will.
Yeah.
I think inherently the species has a lot to do with it, right? Like whitetail hunters are our main customers. I think right. There's more of them, right? Like if you just look at percentage of whitetail hunters to percentage of elk hunters or mule deer hunters, right? There's more of them. And B, I think the pursuit itself lends the cellular trail camera to actually be probably a more influential or effective tool. So I think those two things probably skew who our customer base is a bit towards kind of that Midwest East whitetail turkey hunter. That being said, like we don't say by any means that we're only building product for the whitetail hunters, right? Like
right.
We build a product that is used by a lot of mule deer hunters, a lot of elk hunters. But I think you also hit the nail on the head. Like as you get into some of those Western states, there's some legalities around trail cameras, right, that influence how much people use them, when they can use them, the period of time during the year when they can use them. So I think a bit of like who our customer is actually informed by external circumstances, right? More so than like an internal choice, if you will.
For sure. And then, yeah, on that aspect, I don't know. It's interesting. You kind of had, again, when you're early in a startup, you kind of do everything other than maybe software engineering, which I'm not technical, but everything else. Yeah, I mean, what has been kind of the big things that you've seen, whether it be as a kind of marketer or a product kind of minded person, between the soft goods and then just now, like, to be clear, Reveal makes hardware, game cameras, but also you have software too. You're building maps and that kind of stuff where these things connect to each other. So like, what have been the kind of big differences you've seen?
Well, there's a number of them, and we can kind of roll through them here. I think first and foremost, one of the biggest differences is price point. Right? When you're looking at a high-end piece of camo clothing, right? And I don't care if it's from First Lite, Sitka, Kuya, you name it, right? Like the amount that a jacket costs, and that's one piece of an entire system, right? Is 2, 3, 4, 5x what the amount of one of our pieces, of hard goods or one of our camera costs consumer, not to mention accessories and some of those lower price points. So that's a big difference. I think the other, a couple other big differences are, we sell hard goods, but the other part of our business is obviously like there's a subscription tied to it, right? So you have to activate that subscription to essentially get the data to run the piece of hard good. So where on the soft good side of things, right? Like you're selling somebody a piece of clothing, I don't know how often you buy a jacket, maybe once every 5 years, right? I'm just throwing an number out there. Some people it's every year, every 2 years, right? With these cameras, sure, you might add to your fleet. You might switch out a new camera for an old camera, but there's always this other revenue stream tied to it on the subscription-based side. Now, I wouldn't say that's like necessarily, well, I shouldn't say this. I'm sure part of that is a strategic decision based off of like business objectives, but it's also just like, it's part of what we need to make the hard goods piece work, right?
Right.
What I think is the most interesting difference that I've noticed though is like, I consider trail cameras more of a commodity item than that of high-end camo. And what I mean by that is like outside of a rifle or a bow, right? I almost would say that like next to those two things, trail cameras have worked their way into like a hunter's toolkit as almost like the next most necessary thing, right? Where high-end technical clothing, I don't know if that's the case. Like, I think it maybe had its heyday at one point. I think there's still some people that very much see it as maybe their second or third most important thing. But I think when you're speaking in generalities, like the trail camera is more of a tool that in impacts the outcome, right? Be successful or not successful than a piece of clothing does. So that's what's been really fun for me, I think, in this transition from soft goods over to hard goods and technology, is just that tie to how important the product is in determining or helping somebody get the outcome that they want when they step into the field.
Yeah, there's always this kind of been those memes and jokes that, our great grandfathers were killing plenty of deer and elk and all sorts of game without technical camo. Now, again, I was living in Montana the last 8 years. I moved down to Alabama almost a year ago now, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, you're hunting 25 below zero. Like, I'm not saying that gear isn't important, but it's funny. Like, I wore like Duckworth, which isn't like hunting gear. It's really high quality, made in the US wool clothing out of Bozeman. Like, my buddies own that business and it's just like phenomenal. It's all solids. There's no camo. So like when it was really cold, I'd wear that stuff. But of course, some of the technical jackets, and it can make life a lot more comfortable for sure. But it is an interesting perspective of trail cam almost being, it's a tool. It's more of a must have as part of the hunt than necessarily the clothing or gear. Interesting. I think, I'd be curious. Brand is something in your title. Brand can be this like squishy, amorphous. What does it mean? Before I started LandTrust, I sold in the advertising technology space. So I sold to big brands and agencies, a lot of like YouTube and social media advertising back when that was all getting kicked off. And, I was more on the performance side, which is pretty cut and dry. Like, hey, it's either you're going to acquire customers at this price point or you're not. Brand is one of those things that was just like, again, it can be really squishy. It can mean something totally different every single organization you go to. So like, how do you think about brand and your current role?
I like that question. And frankly, it's one that I spend a lot of time thinking about and talking to my team about, right? Because to me, a lot of times when people talk about brand, they're like, oh, here's my brand book, right? Or here's our logo, or here's our, Pantone palette. Here's our logo presentation, right? Like, it has all these kind of very specific things tied to it. To me, that's not necessarily brand, right? Like, I think that's more of, let's call them like necessities to an organization, right? You got to have a logo, you got to have a name, you got to have X, Y, and Z. To me, brand is really more about the connection between a company and the customer that you're selling to. And I don't mean connection in the way of like brand is not transactional, right? To me, brand is about how do you connect with the people that are buying your goods on a level that's deeper than just of that transaction, but one that makes it feel very community based, right? Like, I want my customer to feel like they know me as a quote unquote person, right? Just like they feel like our brand is a quote unquote person. Like, we're trying to give our brand a personality. We're trying to create these connections. And I think you do that through, creating a sense of community, right? Creating an environment where people want to represent you, right? They want to fly the flag. Like, a great test for me of a good, solid brand is like, you're going somewhere, you're traveling, you're walking through an airport. How many people do you see wearing a piece of merchandise, whether that's a hat, a sweatshirt, et cetera, for a brand? Because that's a choice that they made. Right? When they got up that day and they were going to travel to whatever it is they're traveling for, whether it's a hunt, a business meeting, to see family, they chose to take a certain brand's logo, right, and wear it on their body during this period of this thing that they were doing. So to me, it's like, how do you create that? And I think there's a million ways you can create it, right? I think creating community is a big part of that. Community engagement, face-to-face engagement, right? I think storytelling is a big part of that. Like, people connect with stories that they can relate to. And I think as companies grow, it gets harder and harder to be personal with your customer, right? One of the things I always tell my team we talk a lot about is like people behind the product, right? How many brands that you purchase from, do you feel like you know the people that are behind that product, even though you don't know them at all, right? Like, but you feel like you know them, right? Like, that's the connection that I'm always trying to make, regardless of whether, we were the 6, 7, 8 person team I started with at First Lite, right? Or in the current company that I work for that's over 500 employees. So to me, I think you're right. Like, it's more of an anecdotal definition, right? You can't assign ROAS to brand. You can't assign ROI to brand, but you can judge a brand by how people describe it, how they interact with it, right? How passionate they are about it. If they're a cheerleader for you, right? Like your customers that become cheerleaders are frankly the best marketers you could ever hire, right? So getting to that point, like that's how I really think about brand and how I judge the things myself and my team do. And frankly, like what we kind of use as our North Star.
It makes a lot of sense. And, frankly, it's something that I, as a founder of LandTrust, have always struggled with. We've never really had in-house marketing, any sort of senior leadership here. And, thankfully we've grown to where we've grown based off of the what our product is, right? There's just not, 50 other ones you can go do. We're the largest and kind of the only that do what we do. But I've always been very envious of those. You look at like something, and I've spent a little time with Josh from Montana Knife Company, I don't know, a month or two ago to Turkey Camp with some other founders. And that brand, I mean, kudos to them. Like Montana Knife is everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere in every category. I think I saw Josh just post something too. Like he's at a concert, there's like 5 people wearing his hat. As a founder, it's something you kind of dream about. And yeah, I think people wearing your gear is definitely a kind of a litmus test of that. It's one of those things that I've wanted to do. Like, hey, do we do merch? Do we sell merch? But we're a software company, and going to learn how to do, make and sell hats online or shirts or whatever. Like I know obviously a lot of people do it, but it's for us, it could be considered a distraction. But then I've had people say, well, yeah, but you want to give people that opportunity to kind of fly the flag, like you're saying. So I've felt the tensions there before, definitely with our own business.
Well, and I think it's a really interesting case study too, right? Because products come and go, companies grow and shrink, and new companies come on the scene, right? And to me, a product itself, whether it's a piece of software, a piece of hardware, et cetera, like that will always be a transactional interaction between you and your customer. If you look at, to me, when I think about like lifestyle brands that I'm not saying like I necessarily want to emulate, but I think have done it well, right? Like think about companies like Harley Davidson or Vans footwear or companies like that. Like they've transcended a certain period of not only time, right, but also a certain product, right? Like when you see somebody driving a Harley Davidson, you kind of feel like you know something about the type of person they are, right? Or you see somebody wearing a pair of Vans shoes, it's like you kind of know something about who they are. And I think with those brands, like that case study to me shows it's like, okay, Vans at one point was a skate company, right? Then they were heavy in surf. Then they became kind of a lifestyle, like Carhartt the same, right? Carhartt started out as a work company, right? And they've kind of become this fashion brand. And I think to me, strong brand becomes this foundation, this pillar that allows you to have a little bit of a buffer, right? As the competition changes, as you change, as the customer changes. So to me, it's like, and again, I'm biased, right? This is the chair I sit in. Of course. But it's almost more important than the product or service itself as it pertains to like your longevity and your ability to weather storms and changes in the market, et cetera. Like that's where, sure, maybe you can't measure brand, but I think in terms of its impact in a company's longevity, it's almost unmatched.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. It's something that is super important. Like you said, it can help you. It's not just like that, that one skate shoe. I grew up in Southern California and Vans was huge. And then they got in surf and snow and all that kind of stuff. And eventually it just kind of became this brand that you associated with action sports or whatever it might be, right? So it is interesting to see that. So you were at First Lite a few years before the acquisition, right?
Yeah.
And
probably 3 or 4 years before the acquisition.
Okay, so you go from a small little team, Ketchum, Idaho, to MeatEater buying you guys. You guys were MeatEater's first acquisition. I remember I worked in the parking lot when that was going down. I was over in the other offices that are now Onyx's office. What was it like? I mean, in the space there's consolidation, and I've had other guests on who've gone through it, and it must have been different, right? Because MeatEater up until that point, they were a podcast and TV show and book. It was basically his creative outlets were basically the company. They just kind of capitalized. You guys were the first foray into owning gear.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what was it like to go from a gear company to being acquired by like a content company effectively?
Yeah. I think initially there wasn't a lot of change. So during the time, leading up to that, right? So Scott and Kenton, the founders of First Lite, they had been, talking about, and I'm sure planning kind of like what the next stage of their life looked like and what they kind of wanted to do as the company grew and, evolved. And I know there's a lot of people interested in purchasing and acquiring First Lite. And what was really important to them was that it ended up in the hands of somebody who had a similar vision, right, that they did for the reason they started the company. And Steve was one of the first ambassadors that First Lite signed and had. So the relationship with Steve had always been there, right? It was a relationship with strong roots. I think they saw eye to eye a lot of things. So it made a lot of sense, I think, for them at the time to pass it to somebody that they trusted and kind of had a similar vision and passion for what it was supposed to be. And initially, when it was just, MeatEater and First Lite, not a whole lot changed, right? Like MeatEater did the media side of the business, First Lite handled the commerce side of the business, and we kind of trudged on almost as if nothing had changed, right, after the transaction happened. I think where we started to notice some change, and not for better or for worse, right, is as MeatEater continued to acquire other commerce brands, there became a portfolio of commerce brands. And when you have a portfolio of commerce brands all in a similar space, right, I think there's always efficiencies that can be gained, versus each one of those brands kind of operating in a silo. There's certain services or operations that can be shared to create efficiency. And I think that's when we started to notice the change happen, right? And again, not for better or for worse, but when you're looking at growing a company and you're looking at increasing the valuation of a company, like there's some hard decisions that need to be made. And frankly, like you can't expect an organization to act the same. I'm just making up numbers here, right? Like
sure, yeah.
$10 million company versus a $100 million company. Like essentially things have to change, right, through that transition. So again, wasn't for better or for worse, but I think it was some of the growing pains and the natural things that happen as companies grow, as they acquire more companies within their portfolio. And I think realistically, like MeatEater was kind of one of the first organizations that really tried to push this content to commerce business model, right? Like they had the content side of the business with MeatEater, and then they had these commerce brands, and they were trying to figure out like, how do we pull these two things together to make it advantageous for a single organization? And there were some growing pains with that, right? Because it was new, it hadn't been done before. So it was fun to be a part of. But inherently, like I said, it's like, an organization of 6 versus an organization of 100, they just inherently can't be the same thing. So I think those are the major changes that I really noticed and saw while I was there.
Yeah, I had Dan Schumbler on recently. Now he's at Tethered, but he was. Did you work there with Dan? Well, Dan was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and he talked about it. He's like, hey, man, I missed the mark on stuff. And look, it's, creatives are very different than like e-com. It's just like different personality types. So yeah, I could see there being challenges there, and certainly for a while there, it seemed like they just dominated. I mean, from a content perspective, especially when Netflix and all that stuff happened, it seemed like the world was their oyster. But then figuring out how to again marry that content to commerce is threading that needle is I'm sure tricky.
Well, and even just the different phases of that business, right? Like I remember in the early days, there was no talk of selling the business or a transaction happening. It's like we were very much making decisions based off of like, what does our end consumer need and what does our end consumer want? How do we build a better product, right? Maybe not like what changes the bottom line the most for us, right? Or what,
right,
increases the valuation the most. So it's just like inherently there's a change in decision making that happens too as a brand like that grows to the size it did. Where eventually, right, as we went into product planning meetings, things like the bottom line, right, or product revenue or product impact, like it became more important just because of the stage at which or the age at which the business was. So that made, that caused a lot of change too, just in like what the day-to-day operation looked like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you take private equity, like it's a different, things change. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And there's certain outcomes and hurdles that those investors need to clear to make sure that investment does well for them. So yeah, I mean, I kind of sat on the outside looking in, know people there. And at the time when Dan was running that, we'd meet for beers and talk. And, it's just interesting to see when companies combine and how to grow those things, especially at that time in Bozeman, in that parking lot. It's like Sitka, Onyx, and MeatEater. We're all right there.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty dynamic parking lot. But cool. Well, obviously we're I work on more of the technology side. Now you're, yes, hardware, but technology, I feel like is probably where you guys see the scale and margin, all that kind of stuff coming. Where do you think the tech side of hunting is going? We play in a few different, hunt or fish and outdoor and all that kind of stuff. But hunt is obviously the more unique one because of legal, restrictions around hunting and seasons and all that kind of stuff. The way the platforms treat us when you touch hunting, so like Instagram, Facebook, etc., they treat you differently. Hopefully, we're seeing that loosen a little bit. But I don't know. What's your perspective on the role that technology is going to play in hunting in the next few years?
I think this is what I liken it to, right? Like, and maybe I'm aging myself here, but like I vividly remember, right? Like back when I was in late elementary school, early middle school, right? And the computer became like a big deal, right? It was like this thing that now it was like the average consumer could own. So it shrunk in size, it shrunk in price. It became of like a daily part of what we did in school. And there's this period of time where there's one camp of people, it's like, oh, the computer's going to ruin the world. Like, I don't trust that thing, right? And then there's this other camp of people where it's like, this is, the greatest thing since sliced bread. But ultimately, like, it didn't really matter what side of that fence you landed on. Like, we know what happened after that, right?
Yeah.
I think technology and hunting is kind of a similar thing. Like, I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I'm not saying it's necessarily great for hunting. I'm also not necessarily saying it's bad for hunting, right? I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But I think it's going to continue to evolve and continue to be there, kind of regardless of how we feel about it, right? Like, I don't think our personal feelings are necessarily going to dictate the amount of interaction between technology and hunting in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. You can stick your head in the sand or yell into the void. It's not going to change anything. And what we call, I know, kind of coined like rec tech, recreation technology, really. I've done a bunch of these kind of interviews now, which we'll be continuing to release with different leaders in these technology companies in the hunt and fish space. It's really about maximizing your effective use of the time you get in the field. And, I don't know about yourself. I've got 3 little kids. I got a company, there's not a lot of time. I don't get to hunt or fish a lot. And when I do get those opportunities, I would like to make it an effective use of my time. And that doesn't necessarily mean killing an animal every time or anything like that. But it's just, I go outdoors to relax, enjoy myself, disconnect from technology, all that, spend time with friends or whatever it might be, right? And I want to make effective use of that time. So, the business I'm building hopefully does that by just removing crowds, right? That's kind of like get outdoors without crowds. Like, hey, I can go and book this place for a couple days. I got 3 days. I can go with my 2 buddies and we got the place to ourselves. We can stay there, whatever. So doesn't guarantee anything, but at least we kind of like removed a lot of that. We don't have to worry about, showing up to 6 public spots with 50 trucks and keep trying and stressing out and burning our time and gas and all that stuff. You can just show up there. And I think game cams are very much in that effective use of time, right? So you got cams out there, you got cell cams, you're on your 80-acre property that you have access to or whatever it might be. And you can start to understand how that property works. When animals are moving, what's there, what's going on there, so that you can say, hey, look, I know next Tuesday with the front that's moving in X, Y, and Z, like that's the best day for me to get out there and spend my time. So that's how I see it. And I understand, again, you coming from a very Western brand, I would say, with First Lite and then MeatEater, of course, there has been some antagonistic perspectives against game cameras from that type of crowd. I'm not saying those individual businesses, but like there is the Western hunter who's like anti-game cameras or technology generally speaking. We've had our own haters, etc. So I don't know, like, have you felt that at all as now working there, or do you feel? We certainly have taken the brunt of it. We're a private lands company, whatever it is, but.
Yeah. I mean, we feel that, we hear that. And I think, some of it's legitimate. I don't think it's all necessarily wrong. I think, to me, you hit the nail on the head with regards to, I kind of put it in 2 silos, right? You hit the nail on the head with one of them. And I think, honestly, it may be the biggest driver in terms of our product development and the products we put out, more so even on the software side of things than the hardware side of things, is that we don't all have unlimited time, right? Like, I bet you talk to a bunch of hunters every day, right? If any one of those guys or gals had it their way, it's like, yeah, I would love to spend 40 hours a week, whether it was scouting, doing property improvements, right? Like getting ready for season or even hunting, just actually hunting myself. That's not a reality. But we build a product and we build an app that allows you to do a lot of that behind the scenes, right? It's like I can be working a 40-hour-a-week job, and before I go to work in the morning, right? Like check my cameras from the day before, at lunch, check the photos that came in, right? Or use some of the other different features on our apps as it pertains to like analytics and forecasting, things like that, to plan out when I'm going to hunt. So it's giving the end user the tools to be more effective at the thing they want to do, whether they have a lot of time or a little time, right? The other side of it, which you didn't hit on, but I also think is important, and I think, you guys are playing kind of in this space, like if you're not born into a hunting family or you don't have access to a place to hunt, there is a high barrier of entry to A, learn how to do it, and B, find a place to do it, right? So I think that's the other part of where trail cameras can become really useful, is that it can be a tool to help you lower that barrier to entry, right? To help you understand what animals or game are doing, right? To help you understand, like when you are going to go hunt, maybe where you should hunt or where you shouldn't hunt. Now, I say all of that to also say this. I don't think trail cameras or the app side of what we're doing, on the technology side, is ever going to replace a very basic or foundational understanding of woodsmanship, right? And
Yeah.
I'll tie it back to, like, I'm sure you've heard this too, like this whole conversation about, it's like, oh yeah, AI is going to take all our jobs except for artists, right? Because AI can never create art the way real humans do. I think it's kind of the same thing for like technology and hunting and trail cameras and like what we're doing on the app side. Like you can have all those tools at your disposal, but you still need to have like a fundamental understanding of woodsmanship, how to hunt, how to actually go in the field, what to do when you're in the field, understanding the biology of the game you're chasing, right? And how that impacts the decisions you make. So while these are all tools, I also don't think it's not just like a key to success, right? It's like,
Right.
how many trail camera pictures have you got of big bucks in your life that you haven't been able to go out and kill, right? Like
All of them.
yeah, exactly.
Every one of them. Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's like, oh, it's like notching my tag this year, right? So I think that's the other thing we have to keep into perspective too, where it's like, the same thing could be said about bows, right? If you look at a modern day compound bow from 2025 compared to one from 1980, there's a huge
it's like space age technology.
Totally, right? Like just because you have the new flagship bow from Matthews or Hoyt or whoever doesn't mean you're going to kill a deer this year, right? So I think like we have to keep that in perspective too.
Yeah, and I mean, look, ideally, again, we are where we are today as far as technology and in the hunting space, and are just separating that out. Our daily lives I think we're just busier and maybe more busy than we've ever been in history. Certainly more than an agrarian lifestyle, although much harder work in that world. But I don't know. I think Rec Tech is here to stay. It's here to make our time in the field more effective. And I don't know. I don't see sticking your head in the sand or yelling about it. Again, there are applications of things where, maybe some rules around that make sense for sure. And I know different states in the West have some regulations around cellular enabled cameras during season, et cetera. So I could see the argument there, especially on public land. We're a private lands company, so it's a little bit different. But I think that there is something there. Now, you guys are. I've seen a couple other game cam makers, and I'm kind of curious to get your perspective. I have buddies at some of the different mapping companies, and I got a buddy who's over at Onyx, and I look at it, and to me, a lot of the mapping apps originated in the West. So Onyx is from, came out of Missoula. Basemap came out of Idaho. I can't remember what town in Idaho, but came out of Idaho. And it makes sense, right? That user base, that Western hunting user base, has a shit ton of public land, and they're trying to figure out where all the public is, right? So you need to have like effectively what used to be plat maps somehow carryable with you, first in a GPS, then on your phone, et cetera. And so, that's a very kind of Western approach to it. I need to see every piece of public land that's out there. Versus if you look at the non-Western hunter, 8 out of 10 of them are hunting private ground, and they might just have their back 40 or their 80 that they have a lease on or whatever, right? And so they don't need to know where every piece of public is. They just need to know about their existing property, that one property they get to use. And so to me, I'm looking at kind of like the collision course of mapping apps and game cameras. You guys have a mapping app. I think Moultrie has a mapping app they're building, and it makes sense, right? You're going to, if you're, buying a bunch of the new Reveal cams and you're going to go put them on your 80 acres, you're going to want to see where those things are on a map. And they're awesome. They've got GPS. You don't have to like go and try and find them and mark them. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think maps and, mapping apps and cams are eventually going to merge into one, or I don't know. What's your perspective there?
I mean, I think they should, right? Like, to me, it doesn't make sense to have them separate. And that's why we're doing what we're doing on the mapping side of things. I think, from back to this whole efficiency conversation, right? It's like Onyx and Basemap and a bunch of these other companies, they kind of paved the way into, taking, like, I remember some of my first Western hunts, right? Like ordering maps from Fish and Game of the state I was going to, right? And like laminating them and marking them up and whatever. It's like, now you can do that on your phone. That's an incredible advancement, right? But I think beyond that, it comes back to the efficiency of the different things we do before going into the field, right? So it's like, I'll just use myself as an example, whitetail hunter, okay? So I'm going to go into like what you talked about, right? Like maybe my family's 80 acres somewhere near my house, right? It's like, I'm going to do a couple things before I go out on a hunt. Like first and foremost, I'm going to look at the weather, right? And the wind direction is probably going to eliminate 50% of the places I could sit, from the 50% that are left, I'm going to say, okay, like I'm going to go into my camera app, right? Now I'm going to look at the photos that I've got over the last week on the 50% of places I have left to sit. And then that's going to narrow it down even more, right? And then I might have some other variables, right? Whether it's, terrain due to time of year, right? So it's like, let's say it's close to the rut and be thinking more about travel corridors and funnels versus like, if it's at the beginning of the season or the end of the season, right, I'm going to hone in on food sources. So we have all these different inputs that come into a decision that ultimately just ends up being like, where am I going to sit when I go out into the field this time, right? Now, in the past and historically, all of those things I mentioned required you to go to 3, 4, 5 different apps, right? Because you're looking at your map, you're looking at the weather, you're looking at photos, so on and so forth. Like, why wouldn't we just suck all that into one central location and not only have it all in one location is great, but have those different parts and pieces be able to talk to one another, right? And help you in that decision making. Like, to me, that's just like, sure, you could still ride a horse and buggy to work, but why would you do it, right? When like you can buy a modern car, right? Like that's kind of how I liken this situation to. And I think for us, like, that's how we really look at, I think a lot of people, when you ask them about Reveal, like, what's your favorite thing? Like, they say the app, but they think about the app as a byproduct of the hardware, right? Like you need it for the camera. For us, we like flip-flop that, right? Where it's like the app itself is almost more of a, don't let my hardware product guys hear me say this, but like, it's almost more of a product than the hardware is, right? And that's not taking away from either, but to me, that's where, like, sure. And I'll liken it back to soft goods. A new installation comes out, a new textile comes out. Like, you can improve the jacket percentage by percentage by percentage every year. Same thing on the hardware side, right? A new processor, a new lens, a new infrared component for the flash. Like, you can improve percentage by percentage, but where the exponential change is like on that software and app side, not only in integration, but also in the ability of those different components to talk to one another and provide you with smart, intelligent data, right? That informs your decision-making when you do go out into the field.
Yeah, I look at game cams, they're just sensors, right? So there are sensors that are feeding data into your software platform. And ideally, you're taking, that data and those different data streams into an algorithmic kind of like game plan, so to speak. Weather and where cams are, what they're seeing. There are some companies out there I've been talking to that are getting much better at identifying individual animals. So like, this is this buck that we're seeing here, and here. It's still hard to do, but you start to, put these things together where, again, it just helps you, instead of spending 12 hours on your laptop, like trying to, solve the puzzle. It's just like, hey, you should just go hunting next Tuesday. Doesn't mean you're going to kill, that big buck. It just means that's probably a good day for you. If you're going to ask for a day off work, go next Tuesday, based on all the factors. And I'm seeing that even in the fishing side. I moved down in coastal Alabama last year, learning how to do kind of like the coastal inshore fishing around here for redfish and speckled trout, all that stuff. Just a little bit different. There's a company called Salt Strong. Very similar thing. They got community, but they're building, predictive models for where you should be fishing on what days. And, they call it smart fishing spots, but they're doing a really good job at it. Are any of them perfect yet? No, you can still tell that, there's still a lot of like the LLMs coming through in them. But at the same time, I'm seeing that same goal over and over again, where to spend your time in the field and when, and just give you the best opportunity to have a good outcome.
Well, I think opportunity is the key word there, right? Like you're still dealing with wild creatures that do things that like we're not in their brain. As much as we like to think we understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, when they're doing it, like we don't have access to that information, right? And frankly, you look at like the senses of a white-tailed deer, right? And it's like their ability to smell, right? It's like we can't over technology something like that, right? So it's like there's all these other factors that come into the outcome. But to your point, I think it's about that opportunity, it's about increasing that opportunity. And I think like, again, I'll use myself as an example. Like I'm not getting anything different in terms of an outcome from this technology than I used to get when I did it the analog way, right? It's like I had spreadsheets of deer. I was tracking when certain deer showed up at, certain places on my spreadsheets. I was looking at barometric pressure and moon phase and temperature variations, things like that, right? And like I was getting to kind of the same outcome. It's just now I can do it in so much more or so much less time, if you will, right? So it's like, that's the other part of this too, that I think there's a little bit of misinformation around where it's like, oh, we're just providing the perfect day to hunt in the perfect spot for anybody that wants to do it. It's like, no, we're just giving you the opportunity to figure that out a little bit easier, right? Than maybe how you did it before.
Well, I mean, look at digital maps. The outcome is the same. Your plat map is a plat map. Like it's not like the boundaries changed. And now it just made it easier for people to see like, oh, there's where a piece of public is. So the outcome is exactly the same. And I understand, the guys who used to buy all the plat maps and know about this. I get it. I get them being like, well, shit, I have all this knowledge and it used to get me into these places that most people didn't know about because they didn't put the work in. And now everyone has it at their fingertips. So I could see their frustration, but is it better for, people getting outdoors and getting involved in hunting? And I think undeniably it is. Can it add pressure to places that didn't have pressure before? Sure, it definitely can. So yeah, you still can't take the human out of it, which is I'm not a very good deer hunter. Like I've been deer hunting for a few years. Like you can show me, your app could tell me like Tuesday morning and I can still mess it up. I can still like walk in the wrong way or whatever, right? I could do 50 different things that just totally blow it up and it's not going to work. So yeah, I like that. You're like, it's still the same outcome you were getting before. You just had to put a lot of time and specialized knowledge to get to the same outcome, where now you can kind of like, hey, just focus here.
I think that's the cool thing. And that's the thing I really appreciate about this company is like, we have this saying around here. It's like buy hunters for hunters. And we truly mean that, right? Like all of our founders who are still very involved in this organization are still leaders in this organization. Like they spend as many days in the field as anybody I know, right? Like they're passionate about this thing. And like, that's the lens with which we look through when we're talking about developing product, either on the hardware or software side, is like, what are the tools that we want that aren't out there yet, right? Or haven't been built or haven't been figured out or haven't been optimized. Like we're not just creating things to create things. Like we are the end user of our product, whether this company employs us or not, right? And that's what I love about working at this place. It's like, that's how decisions are made here. It's not based off of, just bottom line revenue or just return on product or just, those types of metrics. It's like, we're trying to build something that we would want to use, whether we were sitting in these chairs or not. And I think that's where you'll notice a difference between us and some other players in the space. And I think it's pretty easy for the consumer to decipher, that, because frankly, it's like, we're one of them, and like, we have the same conversations in a garage over a beer after a hunt as they do. And ultimately, those are the conversations that kind of inform what we do on the product side.
For sure. From a content perspective, again, being in Bozeman was a bit of a bubble. And like Western hunting is super cool. Like archery, elk hunting is awesome. It's a really fun pursuit. But you saw brands like Sitka. I think Sitka was probably the first to go out and really do the films. I don't know. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but Sitka like really nailed that kind of film model early on and super aspirational. And I just feel like a lot of those Western brands, they're showing their product on like sheep hunts and stuff like that, which is, again, I would like to do that. I probably never will. But for you now being in the business that you're at, do you feel like you guys approach your content, like video and stuff like that, differently? Is it, you know, because again, those Western brands really always went to that incredibly aspirational, mostly sheep hunts or somewhere in Alaska or somewhere, you know, in the Brooks Range or whatever, where it's like, that's cool, but I'm probably never going to do it. So has it shifted how you guys think about content?
1,000%. Like, we couldn't have shifted the way we think about content more. Like, that is, for me, that is always the first litmus test for anything that we're going to do on the content side is, sure, like, don't get me wrong, aspirational is great, right? Aspirational is cool. I feel like personally in the hunting industry, there's a lot of companies and a lot of marketers that just market to other marketers, right? It's like, who can tell the coolest story in the coolest way? And it's like it's always this like measuring contest, right? Of like, who's the bigger person here? And like, again, some of that aspirational stuff is cool, but like, I don't think consumers necessarily connect with that or care about it, right? Because it's so out of touch and it's so out of reach, right? And it's so not in the norm for them. So for me, like, what's important is not, sure, like, we have some aspirational stories and we'll still tell some stories that I think inspire people, but ultimately, like, I want you to view our content and it feels like it could be you, right? It feels like we're telling the story that you want to tell for yourself, right? Or the thing that is approachable or is attainable or frankly, like, motivates you to go do that thing this weekend, right? Like, if you watch a piece of our content and you say, hey, you know what? I don't have plans on Saturday, so now I'm going to go hang a couple trail cameras. Like, to me, that's how I know that I'm doing my job right. So
yes,
I think it's important to not fall into that trap of like trying to outdo this other company or trying to market to their VP of marketing, right? It's like, how do we actually tell stories that connect with the people that we care about, which frankly are our customers, not our competition.
Yeah, I definitely, especially being in Bozeman for that time, it's like they're all making that stuff for the film festivals. And it's cool, it's sexy, it's beautiful content. Like, I wish it'd be cool for LandTrust to have some beautiful film like that. But yeah, it did seem like it was very much, it's a lot of the same creative houses that were doing it. And it's like, I totally agree with you on that. Well, cool, man. I know we've had you for a little bit here. Anything else you want to touch on? Places people can find you guys, any of that kind of stuff?
I would say in terms of kind of keeping up with, with us and what we're doing, like, obviously following us on social is big. We post a lot of stuff there. If you haven't joined our email list, like, we send a lot of emails out. Very few of them are sales based, right? Like, we try and keep you informed of what's new, what's coming down the pipe, how to use our product, cool advancements, right? It's like, that's another great place to find information. Obviously our website, we have a lot of stuff on there too, but I think in general, we hit on a lot of the high points, which is great. I think one of the take home points, right, and the things that I'm super excited about, and I hope our customers are too, is basically what I was talking about before. Like, this is a company made up of people that do the thing that we are selling into as well, right? Like, we're not a bunch of just desk jockeys who came from giant tech corporations, right? Who sure might be the best software engineer in the world, but, doesn't know which way to hold the bow. Like, that's not us. That's not our organization. That's not how we operate. And I think, if you haven't already, if you pick up one of our products, be it the app or a camera, right? And you start to work with it and integrate with it and use it, like, you're going to feel that. And I think that's something that we'll continue to commit to, is like, we're never going to try and sell you something just for the fact of selling you something. We continue to innovate on the hardware and software side to try and improve your life, try and allow you to have more fun, be more efficient when you do step out into the field, and frankly, build things that we want to use, right? And I think that's a cool commitment that this company has made, especially in what we've talked about, right? This realm of like exponential growth of rec tech or technology and hunting. I hope, at least it makes me feel good at night, right? That like, this is the type of organization I work for. And I think that'll trickle down to our customers as well.
Yeah. One thing I can say too, because, LandTrust, we're a land sharing marketplace. So we have, 800 something properties and almost 1.5 million acres across the country. We have worked with other game cam manufacturers. And we're now partnering with Tactacam. Funny enough, we had a call with one of your team members today, just happened to fall on the same day. But I bring that up to say, yes, the hardware product is good. The software product, the mapping is really good. But the customer service is something that we take note of. We pride ourselves on customer service. We talk to people all day, every day. Right here in the U.S., team is in North Dakota or Colorado or Montana, whatever. And firsthand, I can tell you that some of these other game cam providers that we've worked with in the past, you can't get somebody on the freaking phone. And not only was the hardware and software not to the same quality, but it was just like we're banging our heads against the wall. And by the way, we're talking like hundreds of cams that we're running. So we're not small. Like we're not like Joe Bob that has one camera trying to get a hold of customer service, which he should still be able to. But that is a huge reason why we really kind of turned towards you guys and leaned in there as we've gotten to know each other, because you guys have people that will answer the phone and talk to you and help you through something, because stuff goes wrong. It goes wrong with every product. We have stuff go wrong with our product all the time, but you can always rest assured that you can get a hold of me or someone on my team anytime. And we have seen that your way too. And I think don't lose that, because some of these companies I'm talking about were acquired, like they got into the umbrella holding company, and we saw like complete, just eventually we didn't even get responses. And so we can just say that confidently that we've seen really high level of customer service, which means a lot,
Well, and I appreciate hearing that from somebody like you, right, who obviously is in the space and understands it. But man, that would be the other like major thing that we hear so much too from our customers. And this is a testament to our founders. Like they have committed from the beginning that we will have the best customer service in the industry. Right. And as we've grown, they've held true to that. We have 200 plus customer service agents now that are Tactacam employees. We don't farm this stuff out to a third party, right? They're in-house. They're in the US. They're end users of the product. And guess what? Like when you call us, you get somebody on the phone. Not only do you get somebody on the phone, that becomes your person until your issue or your problem or your question is solved. You don't get passed around back and forth. Like they're your point person. And what I think is so cool about that is like, we build a product that's a piece of technology. You take that piece of technology and you put it out into the elements for 365 days a year. Inherently, those two things typically don't go together. Now, we do our best on the front end where it's like, we are a very product testing heavy company. Like we never want the customer to be the guinea pig. So we will put all product through all of its paces very thoroughly, both in a lab testing setting and in the external environment before it ever gets to the customer. But that still doesn't guarantee that there's zero issues. So we're going to try and eliminate as many possible issues as we possibly can before it ever gets to the customer. And, I think we have a reputation for having very reliable hardware. When something does happen, we're going to take care of you, whether that's we're going to fix it, we're going to replace it, we're going to help you, with the solution. Like we will stand behind our product and we will stand behind you as a customer to make sure that you can get somebody on the phone, you are heard, you feel valued, right? Because frankly, we do value every single one of those customers because frankly, without them, like we don't exist. And we want to make sure that, like everybody feels that, whether it's you guys, right, who have hundreds of camera out in the woods, or Jim Bob, who has one that he bought at Cabela's on a Black Friday sale, right? Like there's no difference between those two to us. They're on a level playing field and you're going to get world-class customer service either way.
It's a great approach, man. Like I said, we pride ourselves on it, customer service too. And I don't think you can ever go wrong. Talk to your customers all day, every day. And people are very forgiving. If you just listen to them and talk to them and hear them out and help them, like most people are like, oh, hey, look, life happens. Again, weird things happen. You have a bug or something like that. But customer service leads the day for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. And so for Instagram, and we can put stuff in the links but it's what's the Instagram handle for you guys that people should follow?
So we have one for the parent company. There's a Tactacam account and there's a Reveal by Tactacam account. So anything trail camera specific or related, right? That's the Reveal account. And then, if you want to follow along with the parent company Tactacam, we have some other brands under that umbrella too. There's that account as well. But yeah, that's on the Instagram side. Facebook's the same. And then in terms of getting on the email list, which is like the best way to stay up to date, just go on our website, create an account, and we'll keep you up to date with all the fun stuff we have coming down the pipe.
Killer. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you having me.
All right. Well, that was Gregg Farrell from Tactacam, who works on the Reveal line over there. Awesome game cameras, as I mentioned in the episode. We've really focused our work with game camera providers with them because they've just really blown us away with kind of customer service. The product itself is great. So highly recommend, go check those guys out. We put links in the description to their social media, the website. And by the way, if you're a LandTrust customer, you're going to be getting some great discounts on some cameras and maybe even the service itself. So feel free to inquire with us about that, and we can kind of share more of that as we get it live and rolling. By the way, if you haven't, please do like, share, subscribe, do all the fun stuff. Share it with friends, family, neighbors, whoever you think might find this kind of content interesting. It does really help us. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think are the major platforms. So should be wherever you guys are finding podcasts. And by the way, if you're a landowner and you're looking for ways to generate a little bit of extra income from your property while retaining all the control and being covered by insurances and all that stuff, LandTrust is a great option for you. You can offer hunting or fishing or camping or any sort of outdoor rec activity, and you can, get your listings live with us very quickly for free. So if you do find yourself considering listing on LandTrust, please do just give us a call or text us. You can also come to the website. We've got a team of people who are ready and willing to answer any and all questions you might have and get you going. And if you're a sportsman and you have not created your free LandTrust account yet, don't be crazy. Go and do that. Take 15 seconds. You go to landtrust.com. You can see create an account. And in that process, you'll tell us what kind of activities you like to do. Do you like to hunt? Do you like to fish? Do you like to camp, et cetera? And what state do you live in? What states are you interested in? Species, et cetera. And so you take about 15, 20 seconds, fill that out. And then we are going to send you new properties and new trips that match your interests. So if you ever use something like Zillow and you say what kind of house and neighborhood you're interested in, and they just kind of keep sending you as they come on, it works like that for LandTrust. So free scouting for you. We're basically scouting, 24/7, 365 for you. So just tell us what you're interested in. We'll send it to you. And that's all free. I think that's it. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.